Evaluating the United States as an empire is something I find very interesting. You know, I grew up as a kid during the Vietnam War, during a period of great criticism of American foreign policy. And I remember the foreign policy debates surrounding the Vietnam War as to whether or not the United States arguably had become too powerful in the views of some, or not powerful enough in the views of others. And so I think those debates, when I was a child really growing up, is what animated me to become a scholar in this area. You know, as a young academic, after getting my PhD in 1989, the Cold War suddenly ended, and then there was yet another debate about what is the purpose of U.S. foreign policy now that the Cold War ended. And so I kind of see much of my life really as sort of growing up with different debates about U.S. foreign policy and being able to teach other people about what those debates have been and what the implications are. That very much excites me. Well, I would see four components to this particular class. The first one would be just the rise of the United States as an empire during and after World War II, through the Cold War and then to the post-Cold War period. Then an analysis of why the United States has undertaken certain actions that it did, in essence why it became an imperial power, it motivated it to become an imperial power. Focusing on different interpretations, such as those that see America as adopting its policies with a certain degree of altruism and a certain degree of principles and values, versus those who would see America as being motivated more by interest-based and considerations of realpolitik, such as the desire to enhance its power, as well as its economic advantages. The third aspect of this would be how foreign policy influences America domestically, and in particular how the rise of secret wars for the CIA and other intelligence services, whether or not they're compatible with American democracy, and how the associated problem of internal security through, for example, surveillance of American citizens, whether or not that enhances or reduces America's status as a Republican and democratic government. And finally, fourthly, how all of these events and considerations will influence our understanding of contemporary activities, such as America's recent conflict with Russia over the civil war in Ukraine, the war on terror, in particular the most recent events relating to the confrontation with ISIS and the instability in Syria, as well as the issue of America's pivot towards East Asia and seeing China as an increasing security threat. And so to put contemporary events into historical perspective. I'd see them getting out of the class a better understanding of how to use historical analysis and use understanding of historical events as a guide, as a prism perhaps, to understand contemporary events that are happening today, to understand what we know about past U.S. foreign policy over the past maybe 70, 80 years, and how that can influence their understanding of, for example, reading the newspaper about recent events related to America's conflict with Russia and the Ukraine, or with ISIS in Iraq and Syria. A connection between not only sort of the academic aspects of what I'm describing, but also the way in which this would affect their understanding of day-to-day events that they read in the newspaper.